For more on how this affects South Africa's image on the continent and the world, we're joined by Africa-Asia Dialogue Director and Researcher Thembisa Fakude. Thembisa, very good evening. Great to speak to you. Now, just give us a summary of what's transpired and what has brought us to the stage where President Cyril Ramaphosa is on the verge of a resignation, what's certainly being pushed out of office, and what likely impact is to have on South Africa and the continent.
Well, we've already seen today that the rand took a tumble following those events, and the economy of South Africa in general took a tumble. So these are signs of things to come. And unfortunately, there is no leader on site that will fill in the shoes of President Cyril Ramaphosa. And even if there is any, I doubt if whoever it is will be able to calm the market anxieties at the moment and, will bring some sort of stability because, the ANC, unfortunately, which is the governing party in South Africa, suffers from leadership deficit. And we've seen that today as many of us were struggling to reconcile the possibility of certain individuals occupying that very important place of power.
But Thembisa, here's the thing. We look at the South African rand when President Cyril Ramaphosa took over. I'm not sure exactly where it was at, but it was potentially around the 12-13 mark. It is now further away from 18 than it is closer. Challenges with power over the last few years. In fact, it's exacerbated in the time that he's taken over. So what actually has he brought to South Africa? I mean, you talk about stability, but South Africa, the economy has been anything but stable over the time that he's been in office.
Well, one of the things that he brought in, there is at least a feeling in South Africa that he's fighting crime. In the Zondo Commission, with all its faults, and has proved that the president is very serious about fighting crime and corruption and is certainly going against those that are accused of fighting crime. So that's one case in point. And there's also been a number of investment that has come into South Africa over the years, particularly this year. We've had a number of very big companies coming back to South Africa, companies such as Netflix, and others who have invested in this country and as a result promising to improve the unemployment rate that we're all suffering from. So in that regard, it has been very effective. And I think we see now how edgy everyone is, including the international markets towards South Africa, because he's one person who's been viewed as a stabilizer, is one person who's been viewed as a person who can lead South Africa into prosperity. And now that his tenure is kind of threatened, we're seeing all of these movements within the market. So one wonders what will happen whenever he makes that decision. He was supposed to give us some sort of announcement this evening, but his spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, advised that has been postponed because the president is still making up his mind after consulting with some of his colleagues within the governing party, the ANC.
Now, what we do know is that President Cyril Ramaphosa denies any wrongdoing. There are no criminal charges that have been leveled against him. And so the issue really is about ethics? Is it about the conduct of the president, sitting president?
Well, the issue is about the moral pressure that's put on him. I mean, we know precisely the processes that are involved in this. He doesn't have to necessarily resign if he was to follow the example of most of the African leadership, but there is a moral imperative and pressure on him to resign because, one, he is one of those people who has insisted that democracy must always prevail, and he'll be the first one to go if accused of any serious violation. And now he finds himself in a position where morally he's under pressure to resign. But importantly, he also needs to set an example. South Africa has been able to set that example over the past couple of years with two presidents that were forced to resign because of one reason or the other. And Cyril Ramaphosa now finds himself in similar situation. So it's South African democracy at play, South African democracy once again tested. And we'll have to see what the president's decision is going to be, or a reason for him to remain in power is going to be. So it's interesting times to observe, particularly from the social scientist perspective as an African, student of politics, to see what's happening in South Africa, where these democratic shock absorbers are continually tested. And to an extent, South Africa has managed to come up tops over the past couple of times that it has been tested in this regard. And one hopes that this time around, President Cyril Ramaphosa will do a right thing, whatever that right thing is going to be, because that's the word that they insist on repeating, particularly his talking heads, including his spokesperson Vincent Magwenya, that the president at the right time will do the right thing.
Thembisa, final question, something that we obviously want to talk about, is that the President finds himself obviously in a quandary. Next week there is the possibility that parliamentarians will vote on formal impeachment proceedings. Is he likely to want to face the possibility of impeachment, or do you think, for all intents and purposes, if there is a resignation to be made, is going to be made before that possible impeachment process in Parliament next week?
Well, he might want to save himself from embarrassment of going to Parliament and vote it out, or forced to, go into the impeachment process by his own colleagues within the ANC. So I was hoping, honestly, that this evening was going to do the right thing, which is make that announcement that we're all waiting for of resignation. But after tonight, it looks likely that he might stay on, because we are told by other sources that he's been consulting with his colleagues from the provincial leaderships of the ANC in South Africa, and we are told that they insisted that he stay on. So it's likely, therefore, that he might just win. The ANC, by the way, remains a majority in Parliament, but we do know that it's divided. There are a lot of members of Parliament who will vote against the president, including those that have already made those pronouncements, such as Lindiwe Sisulu and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. All certainly won't vote for the president to stay on. But I think there is pressure from other senior leadership of the ANC to have him staying on and have him participate in the forthcoming national conference of the ANC in December. So we have to wait and see. So as I've said earlier, when I was very disappointed because I was hoping that this evening was going to be it, but it seems somehow to have been given some kind of guarantees that it actually can survive this period, especially after this postponement of this evening's announcement, which was anticipated.
Well, Thembisa Fakude, obviously you had your money on the president's resignation this evening, and that didn't happen, but we appreciate your time this evening on Africa Today.